Anyway, so look, nice to see you, mate. You've been on your travels, haven't you?
I have. I was in Amsterdam yesterday. I did a fleeting visit to Amsterdam. Went on Sunday. Did a fantastic event yesterday. Spent all day doing. Essentially, I did my course in a day.
I was about to say it was an AI thing, wasn't it? I had good reports from behind the scenes that you won't know about, of people saying, "Oh, Anthony's quite good at this."
Oh well, that's nice. That's very nice.
And they then said, "Oh, but he's a horrible person, but his course is good."
Yeah, exactly. No, it was terrific. Actually, it was really interesting.
What can you share and what can you not share about the client and the attitudes in the room?
Well, my client is NSI, the Dutch fund, who have a flex operation, a space as a service operation called HNK. Although, sorry, anyone listening in Holland, I know you don't pronounce it HNK, but it was done at their latest property that has been completely redone, and they've just done such a fantastic job. I mean, it's just the most fabulous. Has spaces for doing whatever you want to do. Has a beautiful podcast room. Has a beautiful podcast room. And so much attention to detail, even to the extent that they have their own scent in the space, so it smells specific, and they have background music.
I'm just going to tell you about the scent. It's a funny one, that, isn't it? So
retail,
and I'm sure you've seen this as well from your extensive travels. There are certain hotels with a certain smell.
Yeah, yes.
And the Hilton has one. In particular, and it always reminds me, I went back to Belgrade a week and a half ago. Same thing there. Walked into the room, instantly reminded myself that I was in the same hotel I was in last year because of the smell and the smell alone. Such a small detail, but such an important one.
It's very powerful, and they also have music in the background, and it varies depending on where you are in the space. So in the entrance. They have this really nice sort of undulating bench with lots of trees that you can sit in, and it just has bird noise, little bits of bird. I mean, it's not
subtlety,
intrusive. It's very subtle. And then you go to a different area, and it has a different type of music. And my favorite thing about it is it has a library. Oh. It has a library, including a fire, including a fireplace.
Well, hang on. Has it got the wingback chairs and a whiskey by the side of it as well?
It's quite close to that, but it's lovely. So it's a really nice, quiet space. So it was interesting because it's a big building. It's actually 170,000 square feet. So this is just the ground floor, and the rest is more traditional office spaces. Yeah. But they were saying the amount that happens down in the ground floor is amazing. And they said they get a lot of people who might work half the day up in their office, and then they come down here. And it has a fantastic restaurant, which sort of is integrated into the space. You just sort of flow into it. And it had a brilliant vibe yesterday. Lots and lots of different people from different occupiers, and it's got proper catering and all this sort of stuff. Really, really, really fantastically, as I say, well thought out space that you'd actually want to be in. Which is, has been my mantra for years. And you don't need a space, you don't need an office to go to work anymore. But there's some places you'd really like to be. Yeah, so that was terrific. That was terrific. It was too short, so I didn't get a chance to do my usual museum hopping. But
you know what? It's funny about Amsterdam. Amsterdam seems to me as being the place where I've gone, but I go, and I normally go for a short time. But in Amsterdam, it seems even shorter. I think the last time I was there was probably not even 8 hours. Oh, literally in and out. I mean, it's crazy. I was kind of picked up on the
it's definitely worth spending more time there if you can, because obviously it's a treasure trove. It's a treasure trove of delights. But it was really interesting talking to people. Actually, I mean, this is a particularly forward-thinking company. But in the morning, we had.
Let's go back though, Anthony, just for my benefit, unless anyone else is actually watching as well. You say this company. You said it's a fund, right?
Yeah, it's an investor. So it's an investment.
It's traditional real estate investor.
Yeah, traditional real estate. So they have they're morphing very quickly from what they used to have to what they have now. They have spaces all over Holland. But in the morning we had a lot of their we had some of their customers, some prop tech people. Wouter was there.
Yeah.
And a number of people from agents, Colliers and Savills and that sort of thing. And again, these sorts of things.
And the purposes, Anthony, was what? It was an external sort of client-facing type event, or
the morning was external. So the morning was really them saying, modesty aside, look, we've got someone interesting coming in to talk about something interesting. Come spend a few hours with us, and discuss these future
and
things.
that was you.
Yeah, and that was me. And then in the afternoon, I did a variation on that to all their internal people, and I did actually we spent most of the time doing a practical hands-on. How do you use these tools in a real estate context? So we spent a couple of hours taking real estate questions and actually working particularly ChatGPT really hard. There was one thing that came up which I thought was fascinating. I hadn't thought about, and this is real Western centric or US centric thinking, that we were doing something, and it was coming. I was doing an exercise to show how you could use ChatGPT to help you craft sales emails at different stages in the funnel. So very
classic easy sell to people. Yeah.
Very, very gentle. Give them a bit of a push. If that doesn't work,
this is good. This will really help my job. Yep.
Ask for the business, and it came out, and it's really, really good at that. And someone said, "That's fantastic, but it doesn't write Dutch." And I said, "Oh, well, let's try it in Dutch." He said, "No, I don't mean in Dutch the language. It doesn't actually speak like we speak." And they were laughing because they were saying, the Dutch,
because it's too literal.
Well, it's trained mostly on US English, and so it has a different style. Whereas the Dutch in particular.
And in style, do you mean tone?
Yeah, tone.
Because the Dutch are noticeably.
They were very, very direct, very, very direct, and they were laughing. It said if it was in Dutch, it would just say give it to me now, sort of thing, and that made me think. Actually, I mean, I knew there's a long ongoing conversations about, obviously this is trained pretty well on Western English. It's not trained on, for instance, the Middle East. The Falcon GPT that the Abu Dhabi has been developing is trained on Arabic text. So the ChatGPT isn't, or an Indian or Chinese. But I hadn't thought of it closer to home, in the sense of how a Dutch person would express themselves, or how a Frenchman would express themselves, or how an Italian.
Yeah, but
it's quite an interesting.
It is, but surely in a way you have thought about it, because what you and a lot of others have often talked about is that if you only use and rely on the output from a ChatGPT or any technology for that matter, it's one thing. If it's human plus machine, which is the old adage, it's something else. So actually, in a roundabout way, you probably have, because you have to have an oversight of what is the output in order to tailor it and to make sure it is.
Yes. Yeah. And I've definitely said that. I've definitely said you should consider the output. Yeah. Once you're well trained in how to get these things to produce the outputs you want, you should treat the outputs as a final draft. They are better than you probably think. They're a final draft, and then you tweak them. Yeah. But it is an interesting thing that we get to a stage where there's either different models for different countries, or the models assume a different a different tone when they're used in a different country. It's an interesting, it's sort of a culturally, of course, AI is incredibly, basically incredibly US and white male.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sort of the inherent bias in things, which, okay, you can compensate for that. But I hadn't thought of it in terms of other languages. Well, actually, I had thought of it in terms of other languages, but not other European languages. I thought more out in Asia, different.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that all develops. But going back a step, and obviously you and I haven't really sort of touched base on our sort of unscripted chat, really, which is what we always like to have a little sort of, set the world to rights, I suppose. And I remember last week you launched the real estate data GPT, which came out.
Oh, the portfolio strategy mentor. Yes.
Yeah. What have you? Please give me an overview on that, because I was quite interested in it, and I didn't look at it any closer. And a couple of people saying, "Oh, this is really interesting." And what's the background on that?
Well, the background is that as of 3 or 4 weeks ago, on ChatGPT, it allows you to create your own custom GPTs.
Yeah.
So you can tune them either to concentrate on parts of their own knowledge, or you can add extra bits of knowledge in the sense of you can upload documents to it, or you can link it in programmatically to an external database or something else.
And you did this with all of your blog writing, so that Anthony Slumbers can now.
There's an Anthony GPT. Yeah. Which I just did for fun. I took 3 years of my blog posts from 20 to 2023, which amazed me, actually totaled 110,000 words, which is 2.5 books. So I should have written 2.5 books, really. And then I uploaded that, and you essentially tell the GPT to concentrate on that document, not on those documents.
Yeah.
So you can go in there, and it's a bit of fun. You can say, what does Anthony think about the future of offices?
And so is this what happened with the portfolio one?
The portfolio one, I did. I'll tell you what I did with it, because I have no extra information to upload. I don't have any content to do with portfolio strategy. So first off, funny enough, I went to JLL's website and looked up one of their areas of expertise, and one of which is portfolio strategy. Went to the page on portfolio strategy, which then broke it down into 8 different areas. And then I used those on GPT to say, here are 8 areas of portfolio strategy. Give me the 10 most important topics within each of those. So I then had 80 topics. So if you were talking about, I don't know, location strategy, I then had 10 things you need to know about location strategy.
Yeah.
And then there's various processes you go through to where you say how you want it to treat people, what sort of tone of voice you want it to take, how long do you want it to answer and stuff. But essentially, I just built it around that. I took, here's now 80 things you would need to know if you were learning about portfolio strategy. And I sort of inserted that into it, and then told the little GPT to concentrate, to say, you are a tutor to someone.
Yeah.
This is what you know, and this is what you can teach them. And if I can remember right, it goes through a sort of process that if you ask it a question, it'll ask you another one. So it's only using the information that's on GPT-4, which of course is everything on the internet. Now with something like portfolio strategy, and it would be the same if you wanted to do, I don't know, Shakespeare or World War II. There's infinite material on the internet already around those topics. So it's going to be very, very good at those topics. If you ask it something very obscure, so I don't know, I'll ask it about the beekeeping strategy of James Dearsley.
Fantastically bad is what it was.
It's probably not going to be very good, because there might be 1 or 2 mentions of it. But as I say, if you ask it about portfolio strategy, there's reams and reams of material on that.
Yeah, hang on a minute, Mr. Slumbers. I'll have you know, there are thousands of mentions of my.
Probably my mum. Yes.
I mean, honestly, you'd be amazed at the abilities I had as a beekeeper.
Well, I should do a BGBT.
Yes, no, absolutely, no, we should do that.
But the interesting thing about this, James, these are frankly just a bit of fun and seeing how far you can go just out.
And that's it. But it goes back to our talk the other week, right? And I pushed you on it, and I said, look, in fact, was it you, Anthony? I can't remember.
Maybe I don't know. You're talking to so many people.
And I said, you know, in terms of, I don't think it was. Oh Christ, who was it? And I just said, look, you know, we've got this period of time at the moment where leaders within the real estate industry are having to make decisions about short-term challenges, but at the same time, hang on, mate. It's just my wife. Just give me 2 minutes, all right? Otherwise, I'll get in serious trouble. Hang on.
I love it. This is the joy of live. We should be on TV. You could just imagine this, can't you? David Dimbleby interrupts his narration.
Well, last time it was a cup of tea. This time it's the missus, because you know you've got to get.
That's a better one.
Got to get your priorities. But no, I was sort of challenging and say, well, you know, there's real estate people have got challenges in the short term and also challenges in the long term, and how on earth do they deal with things? It was actually in a conference. There's ambiguity and uncertainty. We can manage some of the ESG initiatives because we know that, you know, climate change is going to impact by X amount. There's a value assigned to it, but there's not a value assigned or an outcome assigned to AI. So how on earth do these leaders deal with it? And the simple thing was just give them a premium ChatGPT subscription and say, go away and discover and find and play around with your job and your role and everything that you do with it, and just explore. And then come back to me and talk to me as the leader of the organization about what we can do to improve it. And I thought that was seemingly simple, but actually when you really think about it, quite a clever answer, because it means that everybody's learning together, and it's all about the culture of everybody being involved and not feeling threatened by something like that, but realizing and appreciating we haven't got the answers at the moment about these sort of seemingly disruptive or innovative technologies, which can either do an incremental innovation or a radical innovation and have an impact on the company. But the leader's saying, I really don't know. You need to tell me how your role is going to be impacted and how it will upskill you. And I thought, actually, that's quite...
It's absolutely spot on. And it came up a lot yesterday. People were asking, well, where do we go? And I said, the first thing you don't do is you don't think, right, I'm going to eat an elephant in one go and we're going to invest millions and we're going to build this. Because I said, you will come up with something that's probably as good as it possibly could be today, but unfortunately will be largely redundant in 6 months because the whole thing's moving too quickly. And I said, the absolute key with this stuff is to devolve it down to the individual. So I said, the first thing to do is exactly as you say, just use this yourself with your own tasks. So every time you do a particular task yourself, think, oh, what could I do something with this? And often I go, nah, that's no good. And then
find out, right?
But then so you start with yourself, then and so you work out your own workflows. Then you do it with your team. And so the team collectively works out its workflows, and that will permeate up. And that, you know, you've been talking about this a lot. When the people are talking about innovation and learning companies, there is this tendency to go, oh well, go and talk to them. They do our innovation and they do our learning. Whereas what this is doing, and it is a function of the fact that at the moment this stuff is the most used to an individual. If you can get this permeating through your business, the knowledge upgrowth, and exactly as you say, you've got people at the end points of a business who operate in a certain way. The C-suite has no idea the nuances of what they have to do to make X work. But of course, those people do. And that's the only way to do it. So it's real bottom up. And I said that bottom up. And sorry, and then just the other way round, exactly as you say, the bosses have got to open the door and give freedom and encourage all of that. That's their job.
Which, by the way, is one of the elements which I think is very difficult at the moment, which is the bosses are going to be brave with this. They've got to be open and transparent about this and actually give these tools to obviously the wider company and say, break it.
Use them. Yeah.
Tell me, what do we need to do and how do we need to do it? And they've got to be brave to do that. But it's quite fascinating. A lot of the discussions I've been having recently, there's been one word which has come out time and time and time again. And that word is curiosity.
Yeah.
And being curious has really applied mainly to leaders. And the best leaders are the most curious leaders, which are forever learning and forever understanding and forever asking the right questions. Whereas I don't think curiosity was necessarily, I can barely even say it, was necessarily a skill set that was required,
there's two things, James. Yes, and I was just looking at my phone because I thought I had curious. I used to have it either on my Twitter or LinkedIn profile, just say curious, and certain people are curious and other people I can never understand. You had no curiosity, but curiosity is really important. The other thing that came up was thinking through again what these things are. Now, these language models, they're not a database. So you don't look up what is the capital of France and it goes off and finds Paris. It's not a database. And the way it thinks, there's been some really interesting large-scale studies done on using these tools with knowledge workers. The biggest one was with Harvard, Wharton, and MIT and the Boston Consulting Group. But they found for creative tasks that using these tools improved everybody, but it actually improved everybody in almost in a very similar way. So James and Anthony ended up having better creative ideas using these tools, but the tools' creative ideas were actually pretty similar. But what was really interesting is when James and Anthony go off and they do their interesting ideas without the tools, they get different types of answers. So the machine gives you better answers, but actually makes you a bit more homogenous.
Yeah.
But it gives you different answers to what humans come up with. So it really
let me just explore that. Help me explore that a second. So is that then suggesting that, for example, initial ideation should be a very human-centric approach, but then when you're trying to go into the detail around a particular idea that has come up, then that's when an AI is used to the betterment? Because I initially was under the impression it was the other way around, that actually ideation and creation actually is quite good in the early stages and then you refine later on without it.
I think
it almost suggests the former.
I think the former is probably correct. The trouble if you do it the latter way, i.e. you go to the language model, you say, give me 20 ideas about X. You've then anchored yourself around those 20 ideas because those are the 20 ideas so that's what you're going to be thinking of. Whereas if you do it like you say the other way round, if you sit down and write your 20 ideas first, and then you put that to one side and then say, well, now what does the machine say? You're not anchoring, you're not restricting your own thought processes. So yes, in an ideal world.
So let me give you an example of exactly, I think, what you've just said. And it was spurred on by a chat you and I had out in Saudi, actually, where you said that you were having you're having a chat with somebody and you wanted a list of questions and you went in and you asked, I can't even remember which system it was at the time. And it came up with a list of questions. You said it was brilliant. It gave me all the questions I needed. I did that for some of the early interviews that I was doing for the book. And the questions were fantastic until I was putting them into an interview situation. And I realized it just didn't work.
Yeah.
Because they were almost too detailed. They were almost too generic based on what I put. And it's only then when I've started with my own idea of questions, knowing the person, and then actually putting those plus resource material into a chat, and then I've got out much better questions as a result, which by the way I still don't use, because actually I use them almost as an anchor, but actually the conversation flows in various different directions based on feedback I'm getting live.
But that reinforces this point, which I was saying to them yesterday, that the more I use these tools, the more convinced I am, certainly as of now, that these are complements to humanities, not substitutes for humanity.
Yeah.
Because we had fun. We had fun yesterday. We were using Midjourney, which is the best image creation thing. And I have a presentation on my a slide deck on my course, which takes you through how to create built world images. So it splits things up into, what type, what's the use case, where is it, what's the lighting style, etc., etc. And it has all the sort of domain specific keywords. But we were doing that for a while, and it was really good to do because it emphasized that the machine on itself would come up with something okay, but what you really needed the human intervention, and the human intervention had to try and think, what am I trying to create here? How do I visualize? One of the keys to using Midjourney is to try and visualize what you want and then try and describe that in 12 words. Yeah, which is surprisingly hard. Visualize something in your head and try and describe it in 12 words, which is about the length of, about the number of prompts into Midjourney, and it forces you to think. Which,
by the way, if I can just say though, sorry, because there's a contradiction there in the sense that if you then say I want to write an image prompt in ChatGPT, it doesn't throw out 12 words. It throws out entire paragraphs of diatribe.
It does much longer ones.
Yeah, which he really struggles with in my learnings. But anyway, look, you know what? We could go on about this for hours. When's your next course starting for people? Because I think it's in January.
Next course starts January the 19th.
Fantastic. I am sure that
details on my website. But it's such a fast moving environment. And I was saying to someone recently, I've been around doing this stuff for so long now. Like, I started in 95, 96, 97 was unbelievably exciting because it was all completely new and new things were coming out.
But did you know it was exciting at the time?
Oh, God, Dad, like crazy. Okay. Like, for my first 6 months, I looked at every single website that was added to Yahoo, which was the search engine at the time. And it started like 20 a day. After 6 months, it got to 100 a day. And then I had to give up because there was too many.
How long had you been married at that point, Anthony?
I hadn't been, actually. No, I just been married. Yeah, not long.
You must have gone, oh my God. I mean, talking to our neighbours, what does Anthony do for a living? Well, he just stares at a computer screen and watches new websites being added to the world.
But you know what, James? This was 95, which was at the tail end of a terrible real estate downturn.
Of course.
Because you had the massive crash in, what was it, 1990 or 89. And the mantra then was stay alive to 95. You know how people say stay 25 now. The mantra was stay alive till 95. And that was Gerald Ronson said that, I think, in 92 or 93. So several years ahead. But the point was then, the cycle was just turning.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is so interesting now. That I was talking to these people yesterday, and we were discussing how many assets are going to go to zero in value. Because so many assets, to meet their sustainability requirements, and to turn themselves into the sort of places people want to go to, the cost of doing that is equal to the cost of the building. So when you actually net things out, you get to zero. And they were telling me they said there's a building over there which sold for 80 million a few years ago, and it's now selling for 20. And there's a lot of that happening at the moment. But it's a real estate cycle. That's what happens. But that's why it's so interesting, and that's why it's so interesting listening to a lot of your talks, because this really is this is a transformational time.
Oh yeah.
It really is changing. The next couple of years is not just an iteration of where we've been.
It's not a comfortable time either. There's going to be some serious winners and losers in it.
Very, very uncomfortable time. But it was interesting as well. What was that thing? Ambiguity and uncertainty. I actually asked ChatGPT, what's the difference? And it actually gave me a really good understanding of the difference, in the sense of uncertainty is you don't know whether this is a 1% chance or 100% chance.
Yeah, so you understand the parameters, but not the defined percentage or
whereas ambiguity,
you don't even know.
It could be black or it could be white.
Yeah.
And you don't know. And that's really interesting. And I think broadly,
can I just say though, but the difficulty at the moment is that all industries, I would argue, have uncertainty. And I think leadership very much, especially in innovative environments, is used to dealing with uncertainty. And that's where incremental innovation comes in, because you know what you're trying to improve. You just don't know how much you'll improve it by.
Yeah.
So leadership at the moment deals with uncertainty regularly. And the stress comes from all the risk. I don't know if it's going to be a good or a bad, and it might fail, it might not. So they're dealing with an uncertain result. Whereas at the moment, we're dealing with both uncertainty and ambiguity. And leadership, I don't think, is fit for that at the moment.
But do you think this is particularly dangerous for the real estate industry, in the sense of...
Define what you mean by dangerous, though. This is it. You said it's a cycle. So it could expedite a crash of an industry. Yes, 100%.
But also in terms of management and leadership and the innovation, that you have got a situation where a lot of the biggest companies are deliberately designed to not be. Well, it's a semantic term. It's deliberately designed not to be anything more than incrementally innovative, because they have to return 4% every year, and they've got no room for error. And so you design your business for that, and then you hit now, and actually everything about the way you're structured is orthogonal to what you need, possibly.
Yeah. So, but again, I think it just depends on, what you mean by is it dangerous? I don't know if it's necessarily dangerous, but what I do think is we have got...
Challenging is probably the word.
Yeah, challenging is probably better. We have all manner of different sorts of firms and companies out there in all different sorts of industries that are having to deal with very, very uncertain and ambiguous times, which means that it's very difficult to plan, which means there's going to be, on a general cycle of business, probably a much more sort of expedited sort of extremes of that cycle. And as a consequence, I think it's almost one of the hardest times to understand who is going to win and who's going to lose. For example, let me just give you one classic example at the moment, which is the venture world.
Yeah.
Anybody who has got an semblance of intelligence is realizing that the next probably 2 or 3 years is probably going to be quite a boom time in terms of possible venture investment, because you've got the squeeze of valuations coming, because you've got a lot of startup businesses which are desperate for cash, which means the valuations are going to be squeezed, not least because venture funds themselves haven't got an awful lot of money to invest anyway. So their valuation is going to have to come down. The opportunities, given the pressures, and this is very real estate specific, on all of the sort of the when we talked about carrot and stick, all of the stick aspects of challenges in the real estate market, like the sustainability initiatives that are coming in, mean that there is this opportunity for new models, new startup businesses, new technologies which are coming in, which could thrive.
Yeah.
But they can't get the funding.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because the venture businesses themselves are struggling to get the funding. But those that have got a decent fund or a live fund already in place could have an absolute cracking few years. But then on the flip side of that, you've also got some of the venture businesses which are shedding staff because they can't get the fund. So I'm fascinated by the next 3 to 5 years in terms of where we end up on all this. And I'm not entirely sure I know where it's going to end up.
I think we're heading to a much more bifurcated world in terms of who will do well and who will not do well. I mean,
but that's always been there, Anthony. We know that.
Well, not so much.
I just say we're on an extreme cycle.
But
you always say when there's problems.
I think it's slightly different actually, because traditionally within the real estate, everyone's been a genius when the market's great, and everyone's an idiot when it's bad.
Yeah,
exactly. They all go up and down together. What I'm saying is, I think you're going to find people are going to go up in a bad market, and people are going to go down in a good market. So if you take the office market the way I see it, the macro demand for office space per capita, per person, is definitely reducing. We definitely need a lot less real estate, a lot less offices.
Yeah, agreed.
Which you'd say was bad, the whole market going down. But if you look at the real estate, the types of office real estate that people actually want to go to, there's actually very little of it. If you say how many buildings are fully 2030 ready, so they're going to be sustainable all the way through to 2030 and will meet 2030 standards, and they're ready to go. So first, are they sustainable, and then do they provide the sorts of spaces that people want to go to? And it's very small, and it's got this weird thing at the moment. It's the London market or the Manhattan market. Manhattan's got what, 18%. Not occupancy, the opposite of occupancy, vacancy.
Yeah.
But some office buildings are are renting for more money than ever. So you think with an 18% vacancy, you're going to have real struggle. But the best buildings in the right location are knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
But that's where I think you've got to be careful on that. It's very hard, I think, to be a real estate generalist now.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
You've got to put your stake in the ground and say, I am creating for this market. And by the way, like to do that.
But the irony being, however, is whilst I agree with you, you can't be a real estate generalist. Actually, I think when it comes to understanding the asset classes, you've got to understand the asset classes cross asset. Whereas before, you might be a single asset.
That's very true. Yeah.
So I think
what is a home? What is an office? What is a hotel?
All merging into one. I think that's going to be probably one of the most interesting aspects, I think, over the next generation of real estate people, is they are going to be cross asset class. But anyway, listen, Anthony, I'm going to have to go because I promised one of my interviews this afternoon has cancelled, and as a consequence, I've come home. I thought I'd put up a little, snowman just to celebrate our upcoming Christmas. But I promised my two boys, as a cancelled interview, I'd go and build our Christmas jigsaw, which I'm about to.
Hey, good idea. Good idea, sir.
Which, bearing in mind, trying to get them off a fortnight onto a jigsaw puzzle is not the easiest thing to do. So I've sort of said anything under 40 minutes, and I might just manage to do it. So we're at 38:49 now.
Excellent.
But anyway,
are we going to do January is it 2nd or 3rd? Well, we won't do next week. We'll do the week after that.
I think let's start back January the 8th.
Okay.
And then we'll see where we get to.
Okay. I might be in Poland.
Oh.
I'm thinking of going to Krakow first. It's very cold, but nice and.
I've just come back from what's called Wrocław, or Wrocław, as we would call it in the UK.
Wow,
they've got a fabulous Christmas market.
Really? Yeah, no, be interesting. Anyway, James, been fun chatting. Have a lovely Christmas. We'll talk to you all in the new year.
See you soon. Right, I'm gonna go on in stream. See you later.